and he is currently working with IBM as a product owner. So, in his previous role, he was the head of operations and for education technology firm based out of Singapore. So, besides, he is associated with Accenture in a software engineering role uh, uh, from where he started. So, uh, what do you, Mr. Ashok?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pragya, for this warm introduction. Welcome, everyone. As I said earlier, thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning. And again, the format of this session is I'll take you through a presentation deck for the next 45 minutes to 1 hour. Again, if you have any doubts on any of the slides, feel free to post your questions on the chat. Otherwise, I'd like to take questions at the end. So if you have any larger question, just stay with me for the presentation bit, and then I'm happy to take questions. On that note, let me share my screen. Okay, Pragya, I'm not able to share my screen. I need your help.
Yeah. Uh, just a moment. Yeah.
Hey, let me get started. Let me share my screen. So again, to all of you who have seen again what this session is all about, probably read a bit of a description what this is about. I'll set up the stage before I get going with this deck. What we are trying to do today is we are going to look at how enterprise agile programs are being run in some of the biggest organizations today. Again, me coming from IBM, I'm going to present a case study from IBM where how we were able to achieve success with an enterprise agile program. But before we deep dive into that case study, we will start with a quick refresher on what Agile is. And then we will briefly talk about what are some of the enterprise level challenges when we try to scale the Agile programs up to a fairly big volume. So we start with a refresher on Agile, then we deep dive into the enterprise level challenges before we get into the IBM case study. As I said, all in all, this will take anywhere between 45 minutes to 1 hour. And again, if you have any doubts on any of the slide, feel free to put it up on the Q&A section. Again, this is a bit of a background about me. Again, thanks to Pragya, we have already covered this. I didn't spend too much time. The only thing I do want to highlight is the enterprise agile journey that I'm going to talk about. Won several awards recently. We were able to win a lot of awards at prestigious business events. So this is a case study that has gone relatively well if we look at the enterprise agile ecosystem. And again, for all of you who have joined us today, I'm sure you'll take back something from this session. The only thing that I require is for you to have a basic working knowledge of agile values and principles. If you understand agile at a fairly basic level, I'm sure you'll take back something interesting from this particular session. On that note, let me get started. Now, before I get into the elements of agile, here's a slide for you to spend a minute or so on. I just want you to reflect on what you're seeing in front of you. And according to you, what is the commonality across these companies? If you can just signify this in one word, please put your answers in the chat. I'm keen to hear from you what these companies stand for when you look at them. Okay, I'm starting to receive responses. I see innovation. Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else has any other thought? Product companies, information technology. Yes. Anything else? What unites these companies? Is there one element that unites these companies? Okay, I see digital disruption. Very interesting. Consumer use, market leader in their domain. Companies, yes. Fantastic, fantastic. Blue chip company, microservices, wonderful. Digital transformation, very interesting, very interesting. Brands, Yeah, I think all of you are getting the drift of, where I'm coming from. But I think for a minute now, let's just step back. Let's think about what this session is all about, where we are talking about agile, enterprise agile. If you were to think from that perspective, is there something that unites these companies? Like, do you think these companies were the first adopters of agile, or is there anything else that you think connects these companies from an agile perspective? Again, you may just want to phrase it in one or two words. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. Okay, I see process of software development, which I'm assuming we are referring to agile. Okay, yep. Thanks for that, Akhil. Okay, I see Guna saying they're fast on execution and changes. Excellent. Yes, that's true. For me, the way I look at it, again, these are companies who adopted a particular process. Again, Sandeep is saying agile proponent, adapters. I agree with all of this. For me, these are companies that adopted a particular process, in this case, agile, and have lived with it for a fairly long time. These are not companies who change their processes overnight or look to transition from one methodology to another over a period of 1 year. I mean, they just stick to a process and they have been able to deliver products, deliver services that pretty much stand out from any other company that's there in the market, especially in the technology space. Now, again, a quick trivia question for all of you. Out of the companies that you're seeing in front of you, there are two companies on this slide that adopted agile right from day one, right from the day of their inception. Can you identify which are those two companies that adopted agile from day one of the inception? There you go. Aritra has the answer for us. Netflix and Spotify. That's exactly correct. These are two companies who adopted agile right from day one. In fact, Spotify, I mean, broadcast their model in such a big way that Spotify model became a big thing for any organization trying to scale agile. Now, obviously, that has gone a bit on the back burner, but still people do write case studies on what the Spotify model was, how they were able to tackle agile at scale. Brilliant. I'm very happy to see such vibrant and such engaging audience. Please keep your thoughts coming as we go through rest of the slide. So let's deep dive into what is agile. Again, I'm sure this is something that all of you resonate with. This is just a very quick refresher for all of you. And again, when we talk about agile, there is this iterative and incremental way of developing software that is fundamental to this process. And as you can see, I mean, in terms of the way the backlog is defined, we start with something known as a product backlog, and we break it down into a sprint backlog, then it becomes user stories, and then your execution starts, which is in a time boxed iteration. Could be 15 days, could be 1 month, but we are looking at a very iterative and incremental way of delivering software in the form of releases. Again, as all of you will be aware, there are a lot of artifacts that are defined across this. There are a lot of ceremonies such as daily scrum and whatnot, if you are following the scrum model. And there are roles that have been defined. I mean, on this slide, you see a particular role, but there are a few other roles that are defined if you were to look at the scrum guide. Fundamental to all of this is the fact that we are looking at co-location of teams. Agile works best when you have co-location of the development team, a team of developer, BA individuals, QA people, testers, all coming together, developing software in one room across one table. That's fundamental to Agile especially when it was conceptualized at the turn of the millennium. The collage that you see on the right, again, these are some of the buzzwords when we talk about Agile. I'm sure all of you have experienced it in one way or the other. All of these terms are fairly common in the Agile world. So I hope they resonate with you. Now, with this in the backdrop, now that you understand these basic elements of Agile, let's shift to what is enterprise Agile. In fact, I realize the participants here come with a good background in Agile. So I want to hear from you. When you look at an enterprise Agile program, according to you, what characterizes an enterprise Agile program? Again, I don't need paragraph. If you can just give me like a 1 or 2 word, according to you, what characterizes an enterprise Agile program? How is it different from a basic Agile project that we can potentially talk about from the previous slide? Please go ahead and put up your responses in the chat. Anyone on this call? Let's just think of, key element. What, according to you, is an enterprise agile program? Okay, I see one response, which is different Scrum ceremonies. Okay. I think probably you're referring to, Scrum at a scale level. So different kind of ceremonies, fair enough. Then I see there is other response, which is vision and implementation. Yes, I agree. I mean, if you're talking about an enterprise program, the vision and the way it is implemented is very different than any small scale agile project that we are looking at. Anyone else? Anyone else has any other thoughts? Okay, I see one other response which says adaptive. Enterprise agile programs are adaptive. Okay, okay. Okay, there's another response, consistent ways to take up and track across departments, processes aligned with agile principles, predicting business value and what holds for it in the future. Excellent, excellent. I see a lot of interesting responses here. Before I move forward, I see there's one other response for disciplined agile. Yes, I agree. I mean, an enterprise agile does require you to follow certain level of disciplined way of looking at agile. And again, whether you're referring to the framework or not, that's different. But we are looking at a fairly more disciplined way of following agile. For me, the one word that characterizes this kind of program at the enterprise level, for me, that one word will be complexity. The moment we talk about an enterprise agile program, we are looking at multiple stakeholders, multiple agile teams working on that particular product or a service. And we are looking at an impact that concerns a big chunk of the enterprise. We are looking at an implementation that caters to many, many end users. So for me, that one word will always be complexity when I look at an enterprise agile program. Now, again, if we were to connect the dot, now for a minute, if we were to say that, look, enterprise agile stands for complexity, whereas probably what I presented in the last slide, which is, agile at the basic level, that probably stands for simplicity, right? I mean, we didn't have too much of complexity there. One team doing their work, sitting in a room, all co-located. That sounds fairly simple, right? But here we are talking about complexity. So how can we marry this? Like, if you want to now bring agile at an enterprise level, can we really marry this? And if yes, then what will it take for organization? That's the essence of this talk. So let's move forward. What I want to now do is I do want to spend some time on the challenges. Now, if I talk about enterprise agile program and the fact that it is complex, at what level do we see challenges? According to me, here are the 5 pillars on which there are challenges for an enterprise agile program. One is customer participation. As you all know, agile talks a lot about customer involvement at every stage of software development. Now, what happens to customer participation when we look at an enterprise level program? That's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2, development team organization. Because we are saying that enterprise agile program requires multiple teams, then how do we organize them? We are no more talking about just one team delivering or developing or delivering software. We are talking about multiple teams. Could be 10, could be 15. In some cases, it could even be 25, 30. And how do you organize such a major volume of team members? How do you organize them in a way that they can deliver on the vision? The third pillar is the application architecture. For any software development program, again and again, I'm focusing more on the product side. For any product development, it's important that we are looking at the architecture evolution, because architecture is the basis on which you build your services, you build your applications. It's very important that architecture is robust. Now, for a program which is of such massive size, how do you build that architecture? How does the architecture evolve? That, for me, becomes another major challenge in an enterprise agile program. Pillar number 4, requirements management. The moment you're talking about 10 teams, 15 teams, 25 teams, you have to keep them busy, right? We cannot have 15, 20 teams sitting idle for a sprint or, not having enough work. And if you're looking at 15, 20 teams, then who manages the requirement at a level above that? Do you have designated roles that are defined for that? Do you leave the responsibility on the teams to pull their level of work? All of that becomes a big challenge in an enterprise agile program. And finally, the last pillar for me is release to production. When you have so many teams developing software, then how do you integrate all of that and release things in a well coordinated manner to the production environment? That's where the end users interact with the software. So let's deep dive a bit more into these 5 pillars one by one. I do want to compare the small scale agile with the enterprise level agile and just give you a flavor of what becomes different. Pillar number one, customer participation. Typical small scale agile project, the customer is integral to the team. More often than not, agile talks about customers sitting with the team as part of that co-location that we looked at on the previous slide. If you cut to an enterprise level implementation, there is a very high chance that customer may be remote or customer may not even be present with the team. In fact, the customer, I mean, the term quote unquote customer might consist of number of different users, stakeholders. We are not looking at just one user being the customer for what's being developed. And then there is this element of a business analyst sitting on the team that need to analyze these complex requirements and manage the customer interface. Again, for those of you who are pretty well versed with the Scrum Guide or the Agile principles and values, Agile doesn't necessarily talk about a distinct business analyst role. Agile does talk about a product owner role, and the expectation is product owner is an end user or a representative from that area sitting with the team, helping the team develop software. But here we are talking about inventing another role, which is a business analyst, which is more integral to the team. So this for me is the key distinction between a small scale agile project and the enterprise level agile, the way the customer role is defined across both these spheres. The next challenge for me is on the development team organization. Again, typical small scale agile, you're looking at developers, product owner, testers, all co-located, same time zone. As I said, working pretty much sitting across a rectangular table, they are working on developing a product or a software. But if you look at a typical enterprise level implementation, it is a possibility that many team members are not in the same time zone. When I spoke about 15 agile teams, 25 agile teams, very high likelihood you have teams distributed across the globe. Some sitting in Europe, some sitting in US, some sitting in India. And then how do they bring everything together and develop the product? In a typical small scale agile project, the expectation is development teams self-organize themselves. Agile talks a lot about self-organization, self-organizing team of equals. There is no designation as such that, here is a developer, here is a tester. Everyone is an agile team member and they self-organize the way they operate. However, in an enterprise level implementation, when we are talking about 15 teams, 30 teams, you are talking about more than 100 individuals working on that project, right? And that's where it becomes important to build teams where you have certain element of designation coming in. In fact, not just designation, it will require an element of, what do you say, quote unquote seniority coming in, where you have a tech lead, you have an entry level developer who needs a bit of guidance. So there is that level of hierarchy that gets built into a team the moment you are talking about managing a program which has 150 individuals. So there is that element of somebody senior sitting on a team who can guide the team, can help team if there are blockers being faced, who can provide direction to the rest of the team. So for me, all of this signal what this signals to me is, for any enterprise agile program, it's important we spend time on how development teams are being organized. If we do not get the development team organization right, that will have a major impact on the deliverable, on whether the program becomes successful or not. So this for me is a very important pillar in any enterprise agile program. Let's move forward. The next pillar is application architecture. Again, in a small scale agile world, the expectation is the architecture evolves. In fact, the best architecture, requirement, design, all of this emerge from self-organizing teams. A lot of it is bottom up. The teams drive, how the architecture evolves for the given product. However, in an enterprise level project, there is a huge risk if you're following this architecture emerging from self-organizing team kind of a logic. Because we are talking about a massive implementation, A lot of integrations are probably involved. You might need to integrate with some other enterprise level software as well. And that's where it becomes a big challenge if we are looking at architecture emerging just from the self-organizing team. Again, I'll go back to that one word I defined enterprise agile programs with: complexity. The very complex nature of enterprise agile program demand that architecture is looked upon in a more nuanced manner, in a manner where there are dedicated individuals who are focused on it, and then you allow individuals from the team to get involved and help you grow it. We cannot have just the team members giving a vision at the architecture level and allowing it to expand. So again, pillar number 3, as I said, the way architecture evolves, we have to look at it differently for an enterprise level program than the way we do for a small scale agile project. Let's move forward to the 4th pillar here. So this for me is requirements management. As I said a while ago, again, I mean, for a small scale agile project, what happens is typically you are developing something which is contained by probably an agile team of 7 individuals, 8 individuals, maybe 9 individuals. It's fairly easy to take emphasis on particular stories, try and do your prioritization, pick stories one by one, and then incrementally do the design and development over a period of time. However, in an enterprise level implementation, because we are looking at this complexity, the requirements, I mean, they end up being so complex, it requires a level of upfront planning, upfront analysis, upfront planning to decide what will be the most appropriate solution. And then obviously that decides what will be the optimum architecture that we want to deal with. And again, because we are talking about multiple teams, I keep taking the example of 15 teams, 30 teams. We need a more integrated approach to coordinate the development of these stories. Maybe there is that level of dependency, especially if you have component teams working in an agile manner. There is that level of dependency across the teams. For instance, application can only be developed once services are ready or the backend is ready. You cannot build applications unless until the backend services have already been developed. So there is a need of handshake. There is a need to hold each other's hand and progress in a manner where the project or the program is not getting compromised. So again, I mean, it's very important to spend some time thinking about how we are defining the requirements, how requirements are being managed, that will have a bearing on the success of an enterprise level agile program. Let's move on to the last pillar. This is the element of release to production. Again, for a small scale agile project, it's fairly straightforward, right? I mean, it definitely doesn't require extensive planning, coordination. It's a small team working together. So once, you have your reviews done, everyone is comfortable with what is being developed as a release, you just push it to production. And again, I mean, the CI/CD, the Jenkins pipeline take care of, regular deployment on the production, the main branch. However, on an enterprise level project, you do require a level of planning and coordination. Again, I was just talking about this component team, services layer, application layer. If that is the case, then you need a level of planning in terms of what is getting deployed first, but there is a level of sequencing that has to be done. What comes first, what comes second, what will come third, all of this becomes important. Otherwise, I mean, we will end up breaking the main branch and the product cannot be delivered. It's very important there is a proper sequencing and we deliver as per that plan. And that is where the integration level testing also becomes very much important. Like, I mean, if you are performing integration across development being done by teams, then you need that level of integration testing, which is obviously complex, difficult to achieve, but you need that integration level testing before things are put on the production line. And again, I mean, at times this require user training as well. You do require individuals who are adept at integration level testing so that they can do it properly, and then you take the software out. So on that note, I do want to take a pause, and I want to have a question for all of you. Now that you have heard me for the last 15 odd minutes on comparing small scale agile versus this enterprise level agile, does this resonate with you in your current workplaces, the work that you're doing? Is this something that you that you relate with? Anyone? I'm just opening up the chat to see what kind of responses are there. Okay, I see yes over there. Joby says yes, thank you. Okay, so there is a question as well. Can I touch upon the architectural part a bit deeply? I will when I get into the case study. Anyone else? Does this resonate? Again, especially those who are working on an enterprise agile program, who are working on a large scale agile implementation, does this resonate, or do you think there is something else that's equally important? Okay, I see another response which says yes. Okay, so I think let's move forward. Probably all of you are still thinking about, what you have just heard from me. What I'll now try and do is I'll try and connect all of this with what we did at IBM. So I'm going to talk about an IBM case study where we did an enterprise level agile implementation, and we are going to deep dive into it. And I'm going to present to you all the elements. And again, I will connect the dots with these 5 pillars so that all of you take back something, something from this session. And maybe you can then try it out in the organizations you're working. There is a question that has come up about, does this apply for this startup? Let me take it towards the end. Again, if you have questions which are larger theme, let's take it towards the end. Okay, thank you, Dhai. I see, yes, the things were totally relatable with what happens at an enterprise. So thank you. So let's move forward. So again, this case study is about a large scale CRM implementation that we did at IBM. Again, IBM being the scale that it is, we are talking about end users being, again, if you know what a CRM application is, this caters to all the sellers for a particular organization. And when we look at the scale of IBM, the number of IBM sellers we are looking at upwards of 28,000 sellers for IBM as a company spread across the globe. So when we were doing this program, for us, the end user base was upwards of 28,000. We were catering to that kind of a volume, which is spread geographically, very distinct, very diverse in terms of how they interact with the tool. So we had to factor in a lot of their requirements and customize the solution to build something that meets their need. Now, again, before I deep dive into the program and how we did it, I do want to spend some time talking about what is a CRM tool. So for those of you on this call who are not well versed with what is a CRM application, let us spend some time understanding what CRM is, and then we look at the implementation that was done at IBM. So again, I think I have done a lot of talking, so let me show you a video to help you explain what is a CRM. Let's play this.
CRM is life. Yeah, it's a way to organize anything, really.
CRM is how you keep track of everything that you're doing with your customers.
CRM is a lot more than just a sales tool. It really is a communication device.
Every company that I've worked with uses their CRM very, very differently. And that's kind of the beauty of it.
To grow and to scale, you need standardization and you need process. And that's what a CRM gives me. And we're looking to grow quickly.
Salesforce as a CRM has helped us grow our business dramatically.
In the past, when we follow up with our customers, everything was very manual. Nothing was automated. And it was very hard to track where we left off with the customer.
Salesforce really allows us to keep closely in touch with our customers in a way that would be really difficult if we were just doing it with spreadsheets or emails. It's super fun.
But one reason why we actually chose Salesforce is because it's easy and it's flexible and it'll change and grow with our processes.
It seems as intuitive to me as email.
We can have tasks and see where we left off with the customer.
You can see the entire life of that relationship.
I'm a big advocate for put everything in Salesforce.
We use scoring and automation to help drill down. And that way sales can really focus on the clients or accounts that make the most sense for them.
If I can have my sales team out there selling, not doing reports for me, it is helping our overall efficiencies, which is helping our bottom line.
We're not in it by ourselves. We know that there's a huge ecosystem of partners that are going to help us become successful.
The Salesforce community is great. When I'm stuck or want to try something new to Salesforce, there's a lot of support out there. Trailhead, great training online.
Asana is just growing really, really fast, and CRM and Salesforce are the key for us to be able to scale.
Moving forward, I only see us adding more information into our CRM, keeping that really great record of everything that our customers are doing in one unified place.
CRM is the way in which we're able to treat our customers like family.
Like, I'm a big Salesforce nerd. My teammates make fun of me for it. I love it.
Okay, so I think in case you're wondering why we are talking about Salesforce as a CRM, because Salesforce is by far the largest CRM provider in this world. Pretty much every Fortune 100 company subscribes to the Salesforce CRM tool. So as you would have probably heard on this call, on this video, right? We are looking at a CRM tool, which is not just a sales tool. It is much more than a sales tool. We're talking about analytics, dashboards. Again, the idea is to make the seller's life as simple as possible. So this goes beyond just logging the sales activities for the company, but for the sales managers to be able to look at relevant dashboard, for the executives to be able to look at the dollar revenue that is being generated by all the sales activities. So we're talking about a lot of company individuals being able to access this one tool and being able to get the insights that they're looking at. So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, for us in this implementation, we are looking at nearly 28,000 IBM sellers who will directly work on this CRM tool. And not just that, we are looking at sales managers, executives, business advisors. So overall, we are looking at a volume anywhere upwards of 40,000. That's a number of users who are going to leverage the tool that's being developed. And again, what we did was we did look at Salesforce as the CRM of our choice, but we had to customize it to meet the requirements of our diverse seller community. And the customization is where the requirements come in, and we need to cater to the seller needs. So let's move forward. In case you are wondering, let's move to the next slide. Now, in case I'm sure this is just a vocabulary in the CRM world. Again, just to make it simpler for you, the way this works is, suppose there is a marketing representative for, say, IBM, who is there, doing a conference or doing any event, and then there is some individual from other company who comes and expresses interest in, say, IBM product. That's when that individual gets categorized as a lead. So leads is a very important component of any CRM tool. Once that lead expresses interest, and again, assume that the visiting cards are exchanged and the lead is keen on talking more about, say, the IBM product, that's when they are translated into a contact. Contact is someone who can be a potential customer for a company. Now, once a contact has been identified, the sales team works closely with that contact to try and convert that contact into opportunity for a company. And once an opportunity is realized, that is when the dollar value is realized for a company. So this is the entire hierarchy. A lead becomes a contact. The contact is realized into an opportunity. And again, the bottom of it is the customer. So again, the moment there's an opportunity comes from a customer. So customer is nothing but an account. For example, if IBM does business with, say, Apple, then Apple becomes our customer. If Apple buys any enterprise software that IBM is selling to the world. So again, just keep this vocabulary with you. This will help you in these slides that will follow. But again, in case you're wondering how all of this is connected, how is leads connected to contact to opportunities, I do have one more video for you, where again, I'll take you into a Salesforce tool and I'll try and show you how all of this is connected. So again, pay attention to that video, because what you see on that video is the Salesforce tool. And you can assume that that's pretty much the platform we are trying to build. That's the enterprise agile program that we are talking about in this particular case study. So let me go to the next slide and give you a sense of how sales teams are leveraging Salesforce as a tool. And you will see all these elements of lead, contact, opportunity in this video.
Selling is hard enough without manual processes and old systems getting in the way. Salesforce helps you make your deals bigger and give your teams visibility into the business so they can see what's going on and where things can be improved. Let me show you how. Salesforce integrates with your website. So when a prospect fills out a form, they'll immediately show up as a lead in Salesforce, routed to the right sales rep. Once your rep is ready to follow up, all the information they need is in one place, and they can click to dial or send an email with just a few clicks. One size does not fit all sales processes. We want you to custom fit Salesforce to your needs. Specify the information that's most relevant to you. Guide your reps on what they should focus on and do next, and automate manual tasks, making it a lot easier to enter information. So reps spend more time selling and less time updating records. Once your sales team connects with your prospects and sees light at the end of the tunnel, you can quickly turn that lead into an account, contact, and opportunity. Opportunities are the heart and soul of Salesforce. They're meant to be used throughout the sales cycle. They are your sales cycle. This is where your team will keep track of which contacts are involved in the deal and what roles they play. See who's on the sales team, what they've done, and what we need to do next. Share files, create quotes, and update next steps. With all this data in one place, Salesforce uses the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence to score your leads and opportunities, providing actionable insights that help your reps understand where they need help and where they should spend their time. When the deal's done, we can even help generate contracts, manage billing, and sync information with your accounting software, so all your important systems stay up to date. From lead to close, there are lots of capabilities that help your reps sell smarter and easier. But let's not forget about your sales leaders who need real-time insights into the business. Instead of waiting and asking reps to manually update spreadsheets at the end of the month, they can run real-time reports, dashboards, and analytics whenever they want. They can see their team's forecast and quickly drill into specific deals to learn more and offer a helping hand. We know your business is unique, so we want to help you work wherever is best for you. If your reps are big-time email users, they can use our plugins to Outlook and Gmail to stay connected to Salesforce while they power through their inbox. Or they can access Salesforce from their mobile device, so they know exactly what's going on before they walk into a meeting and can put next steps in right after. If your team already uses other apps like e-signature or project management, take a look at our App Exchange to find pre-built connectors that can help you integrate those tools that your teams use most. Yes, there's a lot you can do with Salesforce. That's why I recommend you sign up for your free trial, log in, and have fun.
Okay. So I see a comment in chat from Rishi. He says CRM is like your special notebook that helps you remember your customers, their preferences, and take care of them. Excellent. I completely agree with what Rishi is saying here. This is like your special notebook, right? I mean, imagine a seller of a company interacting with some individual from another company. They need to pretty much log every detail, right? The email, the contact number, when can I follow up with you, and then try to sell the software for your company. So this is like a special notebook that we're talking about. Obviously, where Salesforce becomes, more specific is in the latest technologies, which is the AI, the MLs, to allow the sales teams to rate the kind of lead that they're chasing. That's where it becomes interesting. Oh, there you go. We have another comment. So Sandeep says CRM is seen as 360-degree view of customer. Excellent, excellent. That is exactly what it is. So wonderful. On that note, I hope that you have a sense of what a CRM is. Now, what we were trying to achieve at IBM, I'm sure you would have seen a lot of this, in this video, you would have seen, a lot about the tool. Now, Salesforce provides a standard application, and a company needs to customize as per their needs. So for us, this was about customizing this platform as per the needs of our seller community. And as I said, because we have such a diverse pool, imagine a seller who's based in Japan, they are more comfortable interacting with the tool in Japanese. So probably we just have to make sure that everything on the tool can be customized to that local language. Or the way opportunities are being locked in the tool, there could be strict compliance level requirement. For example, say we are dealing with a US federal record or a US public or a SLED kind of a company. Those opportunities need to be compliant. Like those cannot be visible to any other seller anywhere else on the globe for IBM. So we have to contain them to be visible only to specific individual. So I'm just giving you a sense of the kind of requirements that a company like IBM will get having such a diverse pool of sellers or the diverse pool of sale community that we have. So let's get into what the requirement was for us. So we were in the July of a particular year, and again, this is bang in the middle of a pandemic, where we had the CEOs, CFOs, executives of IBM put up this requirement in front of the company. Again, the requirement was fairly simple. Can we have everyone be boarded onto this new CRM tool? But if you look at the timeline, we're looking at fairly aggressive. We're looking at a 1-year timeline to roll out this entire platform company-wide. And again, in case you're still wondering what these requirements are, what is it that sellers want, here is a flavor for you. I want to create opportunities, have them progress in a seamless manner. Managing newly generated leads on the CRM tool is important. I want to have accurate pipeline for forecasting data. I want to have access to accurate accounts data at times. So these are all the kind of diverse requirements that we are trying to meet and deliver the platform at a global level in a matter of 1 year. Now, I'm sure you must be wondering then how was this achieved? Like, how were we able to deliver this to the extent that we have won several awards this year for this entire implementation? Let's look at that. What I want to present to you is a program management framework that allowed us to deliver this particular product as per the requirement in the desired time that we were looking at. So if you look at this, there are these pillars that were fairly important. The first thing is the team setup. The way we set up our teams, we try to make sure there is least dependency across teams. We are looking at feature teams, which are fairly cross-functional and definitely not component-based teams, so that they can work independently and then they can deliver the product. And obviously, the way the teams were set up, that had an influence on the process, where firmly we were following agile and the iterative and incremental way of delivering software. Now, if you look at this, So if you look at this team setup and the process, that has an influence on the way architecture is being defined. And I'm sure a lot of you can resonate this with the 5 pillars we were discussing for any enterprise agile program. That's where the framework sort of, has shaped up. We shaped it up based on the enterprise agile pillars or the challenges that we spoke about. So as I said, team setup process that drive the way architecture was being defined, the way architecture was being developed over a period. And again, all of this was backed by the right set of tools, right set of engineering practices that allowed us to ensure that, the process was being followed as required. We were able to release to production as required. So all of this were coming together in one spectacular way for us to deliver the program. And again, there were also some social elements involved in this, such as governance and culture, to round up this entire framework. From a governance standpoint, how do you give visibility to a diverse set of stakeholders while the program is being worked upon? And that's where visual ways of showing progress is something that we followed within the company. And finally comes the culture element. How do you bring so many people together? We are looking at nearly 12 agile teams working across geos, largely based out of India, but we had teams based in Europe and US as well. So looking at 12 teams coming together, and we were very much focused on the culture. How do we ensure that it is still a one team model, although we are talking about 12 distinct agile teams in this particular case? For me, the one biggest takeaway from this particular slide is how all of these elements are connected. So if you are a project manager, if you are an agile leader, if you are an agile coach, and you're helping teams become ready for enterprise agility, it's important for you to drive them towards bringing all of these elements together. You cannot just be working on team setup and not worrying about the engineering practices and tooling. Or you cannot just be working on the process level side of things and not worrying about the governance and culture of that particular setup. All of this have to come together. That's when the true potential is realized, and that's when programs become successful. And I think for me, the way I look at the success of this program, it was the interconnectedness across these elements, and we were able to achieve that helped us deliver a success story. Let's deep dive into them one by one, so that if any of you cannot follow this entire framework in this one slide, we're able to follow it a step at a time. And by the way, on the slides that will follow, please keep an eye on the bottom left corner. We are going to connect it back to the 5 pillars of enterprise level challenges. Here is this first major element of this framework, which is the team setup. As I said, we are looking at pretty much feature teams, cross-functional, and we were very particular about having full stack development skills pretty much in each of the squad, so that there is an element of self-organization that happens within a team. However, because we are looking at so many work streams and certain teams that are focused at an operational level, we had very well-defined support roles to help teams address impediment. What were these support roles? We had architects at different level, platform architect, business architect, Salesforce architect, which are working from Salesforce. Then we had a lot of, program manager, first-time leader, and a dedicated UX team who was working with all of these agile teams. So support functions were defined very clearly and in a very robust manner. Now, if you look at these independent work stream or these independent agile teams, and if you focus on the diversity of roles, that for me is very interesting. We are talking about a business analyst, an iteration manager, a data role, a developer. We pretty much have this whole range of roles that we have within one team. And again, what you can see here is from a customer participation standpoint, we do have a role of a BA on a particular agile team that interfaces with the product owner, that interfaces with the customer representatives to try and translate the requirements and help the agile teams understand what they are. So the role of BA allowed us to look at the customer team participation from an enterprise level, agile standpoint. And if you look at the development team organization as a, if you recollect what we were discussing in the 5 pillars, you do see that level of seniority or the level of hierarchy coming in, right? I mean, when you have developer and iteration manager, who is probably a senior developer, we did look at this gradation so that there is someone who can guide the team, who can help the team. So we were not looking at team of equals, but people with different level of seniority was integrated so that there is someone who can guide the team if they are stuck, if they need help from within the team. So this is how teams were set up. Let's look at the process. Again, this is agile, so I'm sure all of you are fairly comfortable with this. But I think the key things to note here is although we are talking about 8 work streams, 12 agile teams, we are still looking at one single backlog funnel. We are not looking at different backlog funnels for every team, because the moment you do that, then requirements management becomes a major issue. So we have this one backlog funnel, which has all the requirement, could be lead, could be contact, could be opportunity, could be any sphere. But then you have these independent teams picking up the relevant requirements and coordinating across squad what needs to go first, what needs to go second, what needs to go third. And since we had many squads working in parallel, we were able to deliver a good amount of chunk sprint after sprint. So we were following a 2-week iteration. Because we are looking at multiple teams, they are developing software in parallel, and we had a vertically sliced backlog. So it was easy enough for them to pull items into a sprint level backlog. And again, we kept the meeting levels to bare minimum. Obviously, agile is being followed at a team level. So all these ceremonies are being followed, but at our level higher up, we were very conscious of not making it very meeting heavy. So there was this just one scrum that allows all the team representatives to come together and discuss the update, discuss where they are. We didn't want to have these, day in, day out meetings with executives, meeting with program stakeholders to give them an update. We avoided that. Obviously, we had a program level iteration and showcase. That's where everyone came together and looked at how we are progressing. And finally, since we had, all of these teams working in parallel, we were able to map it back onto a release plan so that all the work can be laid out on a 2-week block. And we were tracking these iteration level accomplishment in the program level showcases. So again, we tried to make sure that we are not very meeting intensive. Maybe, just this one weekly steering committee meeting is all that we are looking at for the executive, for the program stakeholders. Otherwise, everything is at an iteration planning or at an iteration showcase level. And at the same time, we're very careful about how requirements are being managed, the way coordination happens across squads. Now, I did see a question in the chat around the architecture level. I mean, there was a question, can I spend a little more time on how architecture is evolved in an enterprise level program? This is how we did it. There is no single answer to define how architecture should be developed. But we were very clear, we cannot let architecture emerge from these self-organizing teams. We cannot start from a clean slate. So we had an interim architecture in the first 30 days. That's when we defined all the integration level architecture, all the data pieces were put together. So that work was done in the first 30 days. And then we allowed the architecture to evolve based on the feedback. So our interim architecture allowed us to walk. And then eventually when we sort of gave more shape to different layers of architecture, that's when we started to run as well. So a lot of solutioning, for again, there are some examples around, how the account hierarchy needs to be set up. There was a lot of feedback that we got from BUs as well, and that shaped the way architecture was evolving. So again, as you can see, there is a fine balance in an enterprise agile program. We cannot start from a clean slate, neither can we define the entire architecture upfront. Both of these are pitfalls. Both of these will result in issues at a later point. So you have to be nimble. Start out with defining the basic elements of your architecture and then let it evolve over time. That's the view that we took towards the architecture level. And this also allowed us to manage requirements better. So as the requirements became more complex, as they became, as they required a lot of analysis, a lot of planning, we went back to our architecture to look whether our architecture can support those requirements or not. And at times we had to pivot at an architecture level as well. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover from an architecture standpoint. There's one other thing that I want to talk about again, and that is, fairly visible on this slide, which is the dedicated architecture review board, which comprises of architects across different levels: Salesforce architect, business architect, platform architect, even the product owners. The idea was we needed to have this formal board who keeps their focus at an architecture level, so that teams can focus more on the development work. They need not get too bothered about the architecture level view. Of course, they can give feedback, and we did involve them in some of the formal meeting. But this formal board sort of took responsibility to keep an eye in terms of how architecture is evolving, how requirements are being managed, are they in alignment with the architecture that we have set up. So let's move to our engineering practices and tooling. Again, we were very confident that we wanted to set up our development environments in the first 30 days itself. We wanted to give the team a chance to work on a platform, to work on a dev environment which is in a ready shape, rather than working in some prototype level or working in some sandbox level environments which are not real replica. So we set up all our development environments so that the teams can access them and they can start developing the product. And we also had streamlined development practices for code promotion. Security compliance is always big for a company of IBM scale, because there are a lot of, we have to make sure that we are compliant throughout the course of development. Again, we had a dedicated CI/CD pipeline. Work started right from day one. So the pillar on release to production, we are very much sure that we want a dedicated CI/CD pipeline from day one, rather than waiting, for some time and then, moving things to production. We also focus a lot on our test automation right from day one. We ensured nearly 90% of the coverage is part of the regression test suite, so that it is just automated testing. We are not doing manual testing for features getting deployed. Everything is part of the regression suite. And since we already had a legacy tool, which was that we did had a lot of learning from there, we were able to reuse some element of our middleware tooling from that legacy application, that allowed us to move faster, because we had some knowledge base which we were relying on. And again, the last block I do want to talk about is we did focus on a significant reduction in time spent on middleware deployment. We wanted to make it pretty much touchless at the click of pretty much all you have to do is log into a tool, click a button, and that's it, because software is deployed to the main line. We are very much focused on how we are deploying software higher up. Now, again, there are two other social elements I want to talk about. I did touch upon this briefly. From a governance standpoint, we followed a very visual way for anyone to track progress. This was not very meeting heavy. We wanted to have a very easy way of sharing progress related information. Of course, we did define it at a team level, program level, executive level. But if you pay attention, team level, very visual. We are only talking about an agile ALM tool, giving visibility to everyone on the team, where we are, how the sprint is progressing. Everything happens through a tool. That same tool is something where any of the program stakeholder can also access. They can pretty much see where we are at any point of a sprint, or even at the conclusion of the sprint. So we didn't have a separate instance of a tool for the program level. It was the very same tool that everyone was accessing. At an executive level, as I said, just one weekly steering committee meeting where we were giving updates, but we kept it fairly minimal so that this doesn't bog us down. In fact, we had a lot of communication through a newsletter in terms of how things are progressing. That's a much more easier way to spread the buzz among all the stakeholders. Now, finally, coming to the culture, I know this is a very multi-dimensional construct. All of you will also have, differing views on what culture is. How do we define culture? For us, it was very simple. Culture is something that individuals experience on the floor. I mean, when I'm working, developing software, what do I experience? What do I feel? For us, that was culture. We kept it as simple as that. And again, we gave a lot of freedom for our developers to experiment. And at times, I mean, if there are failures, we wanted to learn from that quickly, pivot, and then do it in a right manner. So there was a lot of freedom given to individuals to try things out, fail fast, and then move on to what will work well for the program. So that's the element of flexibility that we had for the individual developers. What allowed us, and again, I mean, from a cultural standpoint, the role of leadership is something that we were very particular about. Leaders were not just doing command and control. In fact, leaders were helping resolve technical blockers. So pretty much, all the leaders that we had on the program were people who come with technical background, people who have been in the software industry. So they were willing to understand what is it that is failing, so they can themselves provide guidance how it needs to be fixed. So absolutely zero command and control in the setup that we are talking about. And finally, we did encourage teams to maintain transparency because we had a visual way of tracking dependencies, tracking progress. Teams were told to maintain transparency completely so that even a CXO can log in, look at how things are. If they have a question, we welcomed any feedback. And again, united to deliver. Although we are talking about 12 agile teams, we looked at that as a one team model. We reduced dependencies as much as we can, but there was coordination involved, especially at an integration level to bring all the software together and load it at a platform level. So we are all united to deliver. So this cultural alignment framework is something that we looked at to try and have all the bases covered, mainly from a cultural standpoint. So again, I mean, I'm sure when we are delivering a program at this scale, there are always going to be lessons that are learned. Here's a slide where we talk about the lessons that we learned. One is it's important to be agile. In an enterprise program, there are bound to be changes in requirement. Things might fall by the side at different occasions, but it's important to still stick to the process, not suddenly disband in agile or move on to a completely new process. We were being agile from day one until the last day of this program. Milestones are sacrosanct, but milestones are sacrosanct. It's important that leadership support is there. Leadership support to resolve technical blockers. That is the mantra that we followed right throughout. Proactive BU user feedback and involvement is again very important in an enterprise agile program. We missed it at times, but as I said, I mean, since we were following agile in its essence, we were able to incorporate it and do course correction at times. But very important to proactively reach out to BU's users and take their feedback as you are building up the platform. Key for success, ability to respond to change. Again, that's what agile stands for, and this is true even for an enterprise agile program. Fourth element here, architecture must evolve incrementally. I did speak about it, but this was also one of the learning for us. We were happy that we didn't define architecture in a very rigid manner to begin with. But even going forward, we realize, the more that we get BU feedback, that helps us from an architecture level standpoint as well. Okay, so I think on that note, if you're wondering what were the business outcomes achieved, so here is the kickoff to the worldwide go live. One CRM tool, nearly 30K sellers on this one platform. The volume of opportunities, we are looking at nearly 1.3 million plus open and won opportunities. So I mean, again, at a dollar level, you can only realize the volume that we are talking about. Quality of delivery was so good that we only got 171 after we deployed it. So pretty much all the core functionalities worked as expected. We were able to consolidate more than 160 plus tools and just bring everyone together on this one CRM platform. And again, we had more than 15 plus trusted source integration, which allowed us to do things in the back end. And finally, we were 100% compliant with all the geo-specific requirements. Could be Japan, could be US, could be UK. We followed all the regulatory requirements and met their needs. I think you have heard a lot from me. It's been almost an hour you're hearing from me. Why don't we hear directly from the CEO and the Senior Vice President of IBM how this program panned out? So I have a very short video for all of you, so you can hear directly from the CEO and Senior Vice President how this partnership between IBM and Salesforce went, what this CRM 360 program allowed us to achieve.
We've been in this mode of the industrial age for the last 200 years. You went to a place because that's where the energy was, that's where the power was, power from water wheels or electricity or steam. It was in the plant, so you went there. We've kind of mentally followed that path for 200 years without thinking. When people talk about the nature of work, well, the nature of work may not change, but the nature of how we do work is where we do work, I believe is fundamentally going to change.
When the pandemic hit and the world was looking at shutdowns, much of what was happening within IBM remained steady. And I do believe a lot of that has to do with Salesforce Customer 360.
We, in a 3-day time period, pivoted 350,000 IBMers from our offices around the world to a work from home environment.
And boom, do we have the VPN capacity? Do we have the cybersecurity? Do we have the collaboration tools? Any company who thinks they can do it all by themselves is plain wrong. Salesforce is a really important pillar of IBM's own transformation.
We are moving our entire structure toward what's happening at the client conversation, because this is about understanding our customer. Combining Salesforce Customer 360 and Slack gives my entire workforce, from Arvind all the way through someone stepping into a sales role for the first day, an ability to work together, collaborate, and do it real time.
Allowing teams to serve our clients and all be on the same page every day would not have happened if we did not have Slack.
Slack is such an integral part of how all our people communicate.
And the merger of these two platforms gives us that 360 approach across our entire constituency. And most importantly, it gives us one single source of truth. This is a big change for us in our company.
This is not even about being productive. This is about delight.
So on that note, I'll open it up for questions. Thank you everyone for patiently listening in. I hope this was useful. So if you have a question, please do put it on chat. I'm happy to take them up. And as I said, I hope this was useful and you do take back something from this session. So here is one question that I'm seeing on Slack, on chat. This is around, isn't this agiling too risky for small startups? Yes. Again, I think, typically for any small scale setup, it's important to try and see if co-location is possible. Co-located agile team is a fairly more, what do you call? I mean, it's a fairly simpler way of developing product or delivering software, rather than doing it in this enterprise agile manner, because this does require fair amount of workforce to get involved delivering any enterprise level programs. For a startup, they have to be careful about the number of quote unquote work professionals that are being involved in this in such program. So that could be a challenge. Yep. Anyone else? Anyone else has any other questions? Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. Pragya, in case you're there, if you're getting questions from other platforms, I'm happy to take that.
Ah,
Okay, so I think either of you have pretty much got the essence of what we were discussing 100%, or I have not lived up to the expectation spectacularly. So I like to believe the former. I like to believe all of you took back something interesting from the session. But yeah, any questions, any thoughts that come to you that are there in your mind, I'm happy to answer. Okay, so I see a question which is around what would be my advice for a startup company in implementing Agile, and when should they start implementing it? Again, I think I briefly touched upon this in my previous answer, but obviously, I mean, the way I look at Agile from first principles. So it always helps to look at Agile from first principles, look at what Agile stands for, first try it out in a co-located manner where individuals can work together and they're able to follow all the Agile values and principles before we think of scaling it up for bigger programs, larger workforce, because that does require an element of coordination, an element of dependency management. And if you're talking about distributed teams, then the challenges become even more. So my advice would be fairly simple: start small, start thinking about Agile from a first principle standpoint, and then look to scale it up. That'll be my answer to that. Okay, I see a question from LinkedIn. What is the normal release cycle duration and how many sprints were planned in a release? So again, we were looking at a release again for this particular case study that I presented. For us, again, a release was a quarter. So a 3-month for us categorized a release, and we were looking at 6 sprints as part of that. So a 15-day sprint, 6 sprints put together becomes a release, which is 1 quarter. Okay, so is there any other question? Okay, I'm getting one more question from LinkedIn. For backlog grooming, who all were part of change control board? As I said, I think when you're probably referring at how requirements were being managed in this particular question. And for us, the formal architecture review board did play a big part in how all of this was being governed. So before any item can be brought into a product level backlog, we had this formal review board with the requirements were being governed, so that there was that level of scrutiny before requirements become part of the product backlog. So that's a formal review board that we are talking about. I mean, you can call it change control board, review board, but we had this, and again, that comprised of different layers of architect, product owners who were working on handling requirements. Okay, so I see there is another question from LinkedIn. This is Manoj. He's asking, how does it align with product-led delivery on multiple products? Okay, I think again it depends. I cannot answer this in one particular way. When you say product-led delivery, I mean I'm assuming you're talking about the go-to-market motion, which is the product-led growth that companies follow. But it is very contextual. In a product-led world, you have to look at what kind of product are we talking about, and when you look at multiple products, are they connected, are they disparate? That drives the alignment across these different products. Okay, thank you there. I see that you gained a lot from this session. Thank you for the compliment.
I see that there are a lot of questions from LinkedIn. Okay. And Yeah, so we can see there are a lot of questions from LinkedIn. Also, the audience was very interactive today. So thank you, audience, for your interactive session. And thank you so much, Asha, for joining us and interacting with uh, our audience and engaging with IPL basically. So please accept a token of appreciation from our end. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a wonderful time interacting with this, audience. They were fairly interactive. I like the kind of questions that have come all the way through. So my big thank you to everyone who stayed for this session. I know this is a Saturday morning, so it's not easy turning up on a Saturday morning, but yeah, thanks to all of you. And I did see that the participants stayed for the entire duration. So that made me really happy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Asha, for joining us on a Saturday morning for you as well, and for everyone.
Yep. And if there are any questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm
Yeah.
happy to meet offline and I can take that as well. Okay.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, audience, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Mr. Asha.
Thank you.